ikan dúdú aró tolongo ikan yẹ̀yẹ̀ oṣùn tolongo ikan tolótòló tólóbìrù balẹ̀. Show.
Hello, I'm Beryl Bernay, and our friends with us today are Danny Ann and Adelola, Adewale, Kwame, Suzanne, and Philip. And Kwame and Adewale and Adelola are from Nigeria. Nigeria is the country we're visiting. Let's see where it is on the globe, shall we? Now here is the United States. Let's go all the way over here to the continent of Africa. And here on the west coast of Africa is Nigeria. There are several areas of Nigeria, and each is different from the other. The people even speak different languages. In western Nigeria, built where there used to be jungles, are the biggest cities. Cities with tall buildings and broad streets. This is Lagos, the capital of Nigeria. Now, if you want to say hello, how are you, in Yoruba, the language spoken in western Nigeria, you'd say, Shea Latiane. And what would the answer be for fine thank you? Adu pe. Try it. Adu pe. In northern Nigeria, where there are miles and miles of desert, is the ancient city of Kano. Let's go into the streets of Kano and say hello in the Hausa language. It's Sanu. Sanu. Eastern Nigeria is very different. There are jungles and rivers, and here's a village. We'll go around the bend of this river and see a father and son who are fishing. Let's say hello to them in the Igbo language and see if we bring them luck. Hello is Kedu. Try it. Kedu. We did. They've caught a whole net full of fish. Now, there's something very unusual in eastern Nigeria. What does this look like? A pyramid. It's very large, as you can see, when a man stands beside it. What do you suppose it's made of? Not stone, but sacks of peanuts. They're called groundnuts in Nigeria. Now, Ade, who's here with us, is from the Yoruba section of West Nigeria, and so is someone else we're going to meet right now. His name, what do you think, is Adeyemi, but everybody calls him Ade for short. Now, most days, Ade dresses in a shirt and trousers, but on special holidays, like Independence Day, he wears his Nigerian clothes, and he wears a fila cap on his head, and an agbada shirt, and he stands very straight and feels very elegant in his Nigerian clothes. Now, Ade doesn't live in a big city, but he loves to visit Lagos, and he thinks that someday when he grows up, he'll live there for sure, after he's been to college, of course. He lives in a village, in a grass-roofed house with his mother and his father and his big brother and his big sister and his baby sister and his grandfather and 2 uncles and about 5 cousins, and I don't know who else. Let's go to Ade's village and visit on a sunny afternoon. Here we are, and the first thing we see is Ade's uncle carving calabash bowls. This is the chief's house. The chief in Nigeria is like a king. And here is Ade's mother pounding fufu for supper. That's his baby sister sleeping on her back. Fufu tastes a little like mashed sweet potatoes, and it's delicious. So is the peanut soup she'll make to go with it. And the children are home from school doing their jobs to help their families. All except Ade, that is. He's too young to help very much, or anyway, that's what people seem to think. So he decides to make a musical instrument for himself to play. What kind? Well, he got a calabash from his uncle, some old nails from his father, some wood from a tree, and he's made a thumb piano. Here's the calabash, here's the wood, and here are the old nails. It seems like a fine idea until his big brother starts to climb the palm tree to cut the palm nut clusters. He cuts one cluster and then another cluster. Ade's very envious, and he calls, "Can I cut some palm nut clusters now?" His brother answers, "You're not old enough or big enough. What can you do?" Well, his sister comes along just then, carrying a calabash on her head with water from the stream to add to the cooking nuts. And she takes it off her head and puts it on the ground. Then she pours the water into the pot. And then she puts in the palm nut clusters to cook. And then Ade and his sister watch the oil rise to the top, and it's bright red, and it tastes good on food, and it's used to light the lamps at night, too. Can Ade help his sister? Oh, no, this is girls' work. All he can do is help gather the firewood. Oh, dear, he feels so sorry for himself, he doesn't even want to play his thumb piano. But look who's coming. It's his grandfather. Ade runs to meet him, and he calls, "Ekason, Mabagba," and his grandfather says, "Ekason, Ade." "Oh, grandfather, I wish I were old enough to do things." "Never mind, boy. I'll tell you a cheerful story." In Nigeria, as in many other countries, each village has its favorite storyteller, and Ade's Babagba is the best storyteller here. So the children quickly gather round, and he starts by asking a riddle or two, such as, how many ground nuts can one eat on an empty stomach? What do you think? Well, after you've eaten one, your stomach's no longer empty. Here's another one. When is a piece of wood like a king or a chief? When it's made into a ruler. And then Ade's Babagba begins the story. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, in the time of our great-great-grandfathers, there was a great chief called Olatunji. And one day, he sat on his chief's stool under his orange umbrella with his royal fly whisk and his royal drummers and summoned all the men and boys in the village. And this is what he proclaimed. "I have been told there exists a strange animal creature which has 152 tails, and I must see it for myself. Whoever captures this creature and brings him before me, dead or alive, shall be proclaimed the best hunter in the land and have half my kingdom besides." So all the men and boys set out on the hunt, carrying their bows and arrows. But there was one little boy who was too young and too small to go on the hunt. His name was Oni Yeye. He wanted to go, but the men and the bigger boys laughed at him. So Oni Yeye waited till they'd all left for the hunt, and then he left too. He walked and he walked and he walked until he came to a clearing in the forest and stopped to rest. Suddenly, a tiny mouse appeared from under a bush, and he stood very still for a very long time, looking at Oni Yeye all the while. And Oni Yeye stood very still for a very long time, looking at the mouse all the while. The mouse got brave, and he came closer, and then he began to squeak. And a turtle came out from a bush, a monkey came down from the tree, a bird flew over to look, and so did a parrot, and another monkey, and maybe there were some others too small to see, like a caterpillar or two and a dozen ants. For the mouse had squeaked a message that Oni Yeye was not armed, and the animals had nothing to fear. Oni Yeye cleared his throat, and he said in the oldest voice he could manage, "The chief has heard of a strange animal with 152 tails, but I don't believe it. There may be creatures with 1 tail, or even 5 tails, or even 10 tails, but there's no such thing as a creature with 152 tails, no such thing at all." The animals all looked at each other and then back at Oni Yeye, and the mouse squeaked, "Oh, yes, there is too," and ran back into the forest. So did all the others, except the bird. Then Oni Yeye said to the bird, "I wouldn't believe there was a creature with 152 tails unless I could see him for myself." The bird tilted his head and chirped, "I'll tell him you said so," and flew away to a hollow mountain far in the distance. And there he called, "Oh, you of the many tails, I have an important message for you." And a rock rolled away, and there was a creature with 152 tails.
"A casson, bird."
"A casson, splendid one. There's a boy who says you positively, absolutely do not exist.
Ha! That's an insult. I have a good mind to show him I do too exist. In fact, I think I will.
And so the creature came down from the hollow mountain and into the forest and right to the clearing where Oniyeye was standing.
I understand you don't believe I exist. Why, just look at my beautiful 152 tails and dare to say I do not exist.
He was a very vain creature indeed. Well, Oniyeye had thought about it. He knew just what to do. And he said, I'll only believe it if you count your tails, and I'm sure you haven't got that many.
Huh! I'll prove it.
And he began to count.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
After a while, he counted a little slower.
76, 77, 78.
And then slower.
101, 102,
And then slower.
139.
And fell fast asleep. That's just what Oniyeye thought he might do. His plan had worked, and he quickly made a leash and a collar out of a vine, slipped it round the creature's neck, and when the creature woke up, he was caught.
I must admit, it was very smart to make me fall asleep. Very smart indeed.
Do you think Oniyeye was happy? Oh, yes, he was very pleased with himself, and back he went to his village. Everyone gathered before the chief, sitting on his chief's stool under his chief's umbrella and waving his royal fly whisk. Oniyeye fell to the ground to honor him, and then he stood up and led in, who do you suppose? The creature with 152 tails.
A cusso, Chief.
The chief was delighted and very impressed. And just as he was about to order a cage for the creature with 152 tails, the creature said,
Oh, sir, how do you know I have 152 tails? You haven't even counted them all.
The chief shook his head and picked up his royal fly whisk. Oniyeye had to admit he hadn't counted them all either. And so the chief and Oniyeye and everybody else began to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and sooner or later, they got to 136, 137. Oh, but by the time they got to 149, the whole village was fast asleep and snoring. The creature quickly slipped out of his collar, tiptoed out of the village, and ran back to the hollow mountain.
Oh, my, what a good lesson I learned from Oniyeye.
When the chief woke up and saw that the creature had tricked everyone and escaped, he had to laugh. And he laughed, and he laughed, and he laughed. So did Oniyeye, and so did everybody else. Well, Oniyeye didn't get half the kingdom, but he did grow up to be a good hunter and a good member of his village. The grandfather's story is finished. He looks at little Ade and says Oniyeye had really learned that thinking is stronger than big muscles or bows and arrows, and that one can think just as well if one is small as if one is big.
That's right.
And that's the end of our story. Remember the hunters in our story? They were like this little figure carved out of wood by the people in Nigeria. As is this lady who's taking fruit out of a basket and placing it on the ground. Here's a man with some calabash gourds that will be used for water. And this little figure shows how they carry things on their heads in Nigeria and in many other countries too. Do you like to make things with your hands? It's fun to do. And the Nigerian people have been wood carvers for years. These masks were carved many, many years ago and were worn for dances. And over here is another mask. It was made by a great carver named Eba, who was so good that a whole group of people were named after him and wore helmet masks like this on their heads. And they'd put it on their head and their eyes would look out here, and it's very heavy. Isn't it marvelous? what do you suppose this mask is worn for? Well, it's for a ceremony at harvest time. People wear it on their heads and they look out here. And it has a crocodile on the top and cow horns on the bottom. And it's worn for good luck. We have some other things here, too. Let's see what they are. Now, what do you suppose this is?
A drum.
A drum is right. Kwame, come on over here. This is a Nigerian drum, and I'd like Kwame to try it. There you go. All right. Mr. Babatunde Olatunji, and he's playing a talking drum. Mr. Olatunji, would you tell us something about the talking drum? What's it used for?
The talking drum is the oldest means of communication in Africa. Mm-hmm. One drummer relays a message to another drummer, and then the next drummer gets the same message from the other drummer.
It's a very much faster way than sending a letter, isn't it?
Well, in those days, they came very handy.
Yes, it looks very good. Now, what about some of these other instruments right here? What about this one?
Well, this is a gourd. Mm-hmm. It grows this big in Africa, and it's a musical instrument. It has all these calories or cowries, as you call them, shells here. Makes a beautiful instrument. Represent one of our maracas.
Let's hear it. How about this one?
Well, this instrument is one of the most indigenous African instruments. It has about 35 different names, and we have them in different sizes. My two favorite names for these are Sansa and Mbira. Mm-hmm. They call it the thumb piano here. Yes,
now, what about this instrument? This is really beautiful,
here?
Yes.
This is the African xylophone. Underneath, we have the gourds, just like you have the pipes here under the xylophone. And we use this as part of our orchestra.
And there's something else over here that's made of wood, too. Let's take a look at this wonderful drum. What's it called?
This is called ngoma.
Ngoma drum.
This is carved from the trunk of a tree.
That's what I thought. It's got faces carved on it, too, with different expressions.
Different expressions, which is the way the artist really see many people probably that he might have really observed. And on top of it, we have the goat skin. And this drum has a very, very deep sound.
May we hear?
Sure.
Olatunji. Now, I'd like to know if you can say a message or play a message of goodbye on the talking drum. Can you?
Goodbye?
Yes.
Well, I'd like to do it in my language.
All right.
Odigbao.
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 Odigbao. Odigbao.
Odigbao.
Odigbao.